coast there because of high tides as well, so just beware of that. And as we head into the first week of November, we hold on to low pressure, it stays unsettled. That's it from me, Jane.
Stav, thanks so much. That is the BBC News at 6. There'll be much more on the developing situation in Israel on the news at 10, of course. Now it is time for the news wherever you are this evening. Bye-bye for now.
Tonight on Reporting Scotland, COVID families demand to know where are the WhatsApps. As reports emerge that messages sent by the National Clinical Director Jason Leach during the pandemic have been deleted.
It all depends what's in the WhatsApps, and we'll never know because there aren't any copies. It is something we really do need to see.
The Scottish Government was accused of not handing over messages to the UK COVID inquiry. Also in tonight's programme, the Scottish COVID inquiry hears from some of those who watched their loved ones die during the pandemic. Schools will close in several areas next week after attempts to settle a pay dispute end without a resolution. Another weather warning for the northeast this weekend means disruption on the railways.
And coming up in the sport, Rangers manager Philippe Clement expects a bumpy ride as the club navigates a busy run of games.
Hello, I'm Sally Magnusson. Welcome to Friday's programme. He was one of the best-known faces of Scotland's response to the pandemic. National Clinical Advisor Jason Leach fronted up COVID information campaigns, but it's what was going on away from the cameras on social media that's become the focus of a row over transparency, one which is overshadowing the inquiries south and north of the border that want to learn lessons from the way governments responded to COVID. It's been reported that Professor Leach deleted his WhatsApp messages on a daily basis during the pandemic. Our political correspondent David Wallace-Lockhart has the story.
The final decision on that will not be mine. That will be a judgment for the First Minister and her colleagues.
During the pandemic, Professor Jason Leach was widely praised for his communication skills. But now his WhatsApp communications are in the spotlight. The Times has reported that during the pandemic, Professor Leach deleted his messages daily. Some who lost loved ones in the pandemic would have liked to have seen these messages.
It all depends what's in the WhatsApps, and we'll never know because there aren't any copies. It is something we really do need to see them to understand what's going on, and to not be able to have that, it takes an important step away from the decision-making process and the knowledge of why people made that decision.
One minister believes government WhatsApps are not of significant interest.
What my experience has been over the last couple of years as a minister is that WhatsApp simply isn't used for making decisions. It might be used for really trivial correspondence like, I'm running a bit late for a meeting, or, have you seen this article that you should read? Really trivial things like that I think most people wouldn't keep in their daily correspondence. But decision making is all taken through the formal channels.
But a former SNP Health Secretary says the public have a right to see WhatsApp conversations.
So it is not true to say or to try and mislead people by saying we don't take decisions on WhatsApp. That's right, you probably don't take decisions on WhatsApp, but the lead up to the decision is in WhatsApp. And that is supposed to be available in the public domain as well.
Mr Neil blames government guidance and doesn't feel Professor Leach should carry the can.
I don't think Jason Leach should be hung out to dry for what's a systemic fault in the way the Scottish Government's been run.
A reason this all matters is that the UK COVID inquiry is currently seeking Scottish Government WhatsApps. They say almost none have been handed over. This summer, Humza Yousaf seemed to imply government policy would ensure such messages were preserved.
That we have, of course, and have had a long-standing policy on retention of documents, and not just documents, in fact, as per email or written correspondence, but including social media messages.
It looks like both Scottish and UK government figures use WhatsApp. What's less clear is the rules around retaining messages. As of today, it appears multiple Scottish Government ministers have default message timers on their WhatsApp, meaning messages are automatically deleted unless they opt to keep them.
This afternoon, Professor Leach had no comment to make, but questions about WhatsApp use seemed to go beyond him.
And David, those wider problems are what the opposition is beginning to pick up on now.
That's right. You've got the Scottish Conservatives saying there is a rotten culture of secrecy here. Scottish Labour are actually calling for an investigation. They think that Humza Yousaf may have broken the ministerial code in that exchange we showed there in Holyrood, where he said there was a policy for retaining WhatsApps. I think Humza Yousaf would really push back on any suggestion he may have knowingly misled MSPs, in part because there does appear to be a policy around retention that does exist. The problem here seems to be you have people like Alex Neowa, Cabinet Secretary under both Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon, saying that Scottish Government ministers don't understand the rules, don't understand what's expected of them when it comes to informal platforms like WhatsApp in comparison to more formal areas like email, like minutes that are kept by civil servants. And what he's saying Humza Yousaf should do is make a decision here about whether saying there will be no use of WhatsApp in government or saying you can use WhatsApp in government, but we must have private offices looked into every single message about government, and they should be available for you or I to use FOI legislation to see should we want to see them the way we can do with other forms of communications. Now, the Scottish Government does say that more WhatsApp messages will be going to the UK-wide COVID inquiry shortly, but that COVID inquiry has already expressed surprise at how many WhatsApp messages no longer appear to exist.
OK, David, thank you very much for that. This whole controversy has been thrown up by the fact-finding that's been going on, as David has explained, in the UK-wide COVID inquiry. Now, this is distinct from the Scottish COVID inquiry, which is running at the same time. And today, the Scottish inquiry has been hearing about the human cost of the response to the pandemic, as Stephen Godden reports.
Lots of fun and laughter is how Jane Morrison describes her 20 years together with wife Jackie. Those recollections were a starting point as Jane came to the Scottish COVID inquiry to tell her story of losing Jackie to the illness. Jackie died in October 2020 at the age of 49. She tested negative for COVID when she was admitted to Nine Wells, suffering from jaundice. 15 days later, she tested positive after developing a temperature. When her organs failed, doctors said there was nothing they could do.
But they got her already. Took her into the side room, and I was able to sit with her for 15 minutes before she died.
As a member of the Scottish Bereaved Families Group, Jane asked for candour from the decision makers who'll give evidence later. The Partygate episode, she said, signified a culture of contempt for ordinary people. Losing someone during the pandemic, she told Lord Brailsford, is very different to a normal bereavement.
And one of the things that I think was the most difficult was the lack of physical contact after bereavement or at a funeral. I mean, it's 7 months after Jackie died before I got a hug.
The afternoon evidence came from members of the care home relatives group, set up as the first wave of the pandemic was easing.
You could eat out to help out, there was travel corridors, but there was nothing meaningful changing for care homes. It was as if residents had just been forgotten about.
The group campaigned for Anne's Law, a push for better visiting rights, named after Anne Duke, who was cut off from her family for months in a care home.
We weren't seen as husbands, wives, lifelong companions. We were seen as vectors of infection. That's all we were to public health. And that's why we have said, please God, allow at least one person in.
But Anne's Law is part of the wider National Care Service Bill, which has been paused. A big frustration for Anne Duke's daughter.
Something this simple should not take this long to get put through in law. So we clearly have someone somewhere that's putting a barrier up for us. And if it's taken this long to get us to this point, I worry how much longer it's going to take.
Today was the first time the Scottish COVID inquiry heard evidence from people who lost loved ones to COVID. It's a process separate to the UK COVID inquiry that will ultimately examine the decisions that were made about the pandemic in Scotland. Stephen Godden reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
The strikes that will close schools in several areas next week are on. This is despite another round of talks involving council leaders today. They say they don't have the money to give staff a bigger pay rise, and they've put off a decision on whether to enforce a pay deal, which has already been rejected by the largest union involved, Unison. While our news correspondent Jamie McIver is outside the offices of the council body COSLA, are there any signs at all, Jamie, of a resolution ahead?
It's not looking terribly hopeful tonight, I have to say, Sally. Now, council leaders discussed the ongoing pay dispute for several hours today. Now, if you think back a few weeks, you'll remember a 3-day strike by Unison members such as janitors and school cleaners, which closed schools in several council areas. Well, a fresh round of rolling regional strikes is due to get underway on Wednesday. It'll lead to schools closing for the day in 4 areas, including Glasgow. Now, the pay offer itself is proving divisive. It means a rise of around £2,000 for the lowest paid and at least 5.5% for everybody else. Why do I say divisive? Well, 2 of the big council unions back it, Unite and the GMB, but the biggest union, Unison, is opposed. Now, council leaders deliberated for some time today over whether to just go ahead and impose this pay offer despite Unison's opposition. A decision on whether or not to do that has been put off until next week. But in the meantime, councils will seek talks with Unison, and I think what they'll try to do is talk to Unison about some of their other concerns and ambitions on pay. They'll say there's no more money this year, but they might be able to look at things like the ambition which Unison has for a substantial rise in the longer term in the wages of the lowest paid. But I'm afraid there doesn't seem to be any hope tonight of a resolution in time to get Wednesday's strike called off. And remember, one of Unison's main concerns about the current pay offer is just how it will be funded. It fears that without more money from the Scottish Government, there will need to be more cuts and savings to local services so councils can balance their books. The Scottish Government would argue it's already done all it can to help councils in the current financial year.
Jamie, thank you. Jamie McIver there in Edinburgh. Some of the day's other stories now. The billionaire tycoon Elon Musk has accused the First Minister of being a blatant racist. The owner of X, formerly Twitter, responded to a video shared on the platform of Humza Yousaf giving a speech when he was Justice Minister about the lack of diversity in senior positions in Scotland. A spokesperson for the First Minister said that Mr Musk should tackle the racism and hatred that goes unchecked on the social media platform he owns. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar has joined calls for a ceasefire in the Middle East. It comes amid criticism from some within the party of the UK leadership's position on Israel and Gaza. Sir Keir Starmer has said there should be humanitarian pauses to allow aid into Gaza and people out, but he's not called for a ceasefire. Mr Sarwar said too many innocent lives had been lost. Hundreds of workers at Scottish Water are to go on strike next month in a dispute over pay and a new grading structure. Staff, including treatment operatives and maintenance engineers, will walk out on the 10th of November for 4 days. Scottish Water said it would do all it could to ensure customers didn't experience disruption. Further strike action has been scheduled for January. Tributes have been paid to the victims of the Arbroath lifeboat disaster at a service to mark the 70th anniversary of the tragedy, which claimed the lives of 6 crew members. On that day, the Robert Lindsay lifeboat was launched after distress rockets were seen 3 miles east of Fife Ness. It capsized on its return to harbour just 300 yards from shore. The RNLI laid wreaths at sea and at the cemetery in which the victims are buried. The Scottish Greens say the council tax system is unfair and broken, and they claim they've secured a commitment from the First Minister to reform it. The party's leadership have been talking to us ahead of their autumn conference in Fife this weekend. They've defended their time in office and their partnership with the SNP. Our correspondent David Henderson reports.
That's the red line. Out on the stump in a community garden in Fife as the Scottish Greens prepare for their autumn conference. They're aware this might just be the last one they hold before a general election.
The Scottish Greens have a bit of a challenge. They're not just in opposition, they're the junior partner in the Scottish Government. So they're judged not just by what they say, but by what they do.
10 days ago, they learned the hard way the problems with that relationship as the First Minister told his party conference he'll freeze council tax for householders in Scotland next year. It blindsided the Greens, but now they tell me they've something in return, a promise of reform of the council tax system.
How that decision was announced was absolutely frustrating. What we now need to do, of course, is work forward through the budget process this year to ensure that councils are fully funded. The Scottish Greens have been critical of council tax freezes, but fundamentally the council tax in Scotland is not fit for purpose. It's not progressive, it's not fair. So the real goal here is to work towards proper reform of the council tax, and the First Minister has committed to that. That is something the Scottish Greens fully believe in, and will look forward to moving forward that process.
The Greens have had setbacks this year, with the deposit return scheme blocked by Westminster and plans for enhanced marine protection shelved. Their influence angers some in the SNP, but the power-sharing deal remains in place.
Having Greens in government means that we are part of that budget process, and all the priorities that are important to us, the climate emergency, nature emergency, child poverty, cost of living, having Greens in the room makes sure these things will be part of that budget process also.
The Greens back Scottish independence, and in next year's election they're planning to field candidates in more seats than ever before. That could prove a crucial move if it's a tight contest. David Henderson, reporting Scotland, Rosyth.
Sport now, what you got for us?
Oh, plenty, Sally. Big weekend of rugby and football. Thanks very much. Yes, hello there. After a busy midweek of European football, the attention turns back to the domestic game this weekend, and Rangers manager Philippe Clement says it's going to be a bumpy ride for the club as they navigate a busy schedule of matches over the coming weeks, which now includes a Christmas Eve meeting with Motherwell. That neither club is happy about. Well, after picking up a point against Sparta Prague in the Europa League last night, next up is a home match against Hearts on Sunday. Clement says Kamar Roof will be out as they look to rebuild the forward after his persistent injuries, while Danilo is not yet fit to feature for 90 minutes.
I don't know, it's going to be a bumpy ride, that's normal in these circumstances. But we're going to take that ride the best as possible, and I hope we go straight over the bumps. That's my hope. We're going to work hard with the players around that, about their fitness, about their recovery, about their lifestyle, about what we need to do tactically, how we can do things. This morning also, of course, everybody's tired after a game like that, but this morning we had a video meeting also about the things that were good, the things we had to improve.
Aberdeen manager Barry Robson has questioned the role of VAR after his side let a 2-goal lead slip to lose 3-2 against PAOK last night. The Dons saw their hopes of a first European group stage win in almost 16 years slip dramatically from their grasp with a last-minute penalty for the visitors. And the manager wasn't pleased that VAR didn't give his side a penalty earlier in the match. Aberdeen sit third in the group with 1 point from 3 games.
I get when referees make mistakes, because I make mistakes, and we lost the game when players make mistakes. Footballers make mistakes, like Richard slipped. I make mistakes on a lot of the time. Referees, when they make a decision, they don't see it. But when VAR comes in, and this is what we take it in for, to look at it and check it and watch it 6 times, and they still get it wrong, that's my problem. That's my worry.
The problem,
how can they get that wrong?
The problem is I don't think VAR actually did check it.
Oh, so they've not even done that? Well, what's VAR doing here then? Might as well taking it away.
Hibs head coach Nick Montgomery says he can take positives from the 4-0 defeat against Rangers last weekend as the club prepare to face league leaders Celtic tomorrow. That's now 3 league matches without a win for the Easter Road side, but Montgomery stressed that they are still evolving.
Yeah, when I look over the time I've been here, you're going to have ups and downs, and that was definitely a disappointment. But I also took a lot of positives from the game and learned a lot. So definitely moving forward for the rest of the season, just take a lot of good things from it.
Scotland women's head coach Pedro Martinez Losa says he knows his team will compete with Netherlands in their Nations League encounter tonight. The Dutch are ranked 7th in the world, 16 places above the Scots, who are still searching for a first win in League A and will be without star midfielder Erin Cuthbert, something the manager isn't too concerned about.
I think we have a long journey now of being consistent in performance, competing against the big teams, and we know we will do it again tomorrow. That's one part. The challenges of missing some players through injury, I think, are an opportunity also to highlight other aspects of the team, values of togetherness, of preparation, tactics.
And you can watch that match on the BBC Scotland channel from 7:30 tonight. Now, Scotland's women's rugby team have made it 3 bonus point wins in a row at the WXV2 event in South Africa after beating Japan comfortably. Emma Orr scored 2 tries in the match, which finished 38-7 to the Scots, who have already beaten South Africa and Italy. Brian Eason's side are in with a chance of taking the title depending on Italy's result tomorrow. Sticking with rugby, and it's a big Saturday for both Edinburgh and Glasgow Warriors as they aim to make it back-to-back wins in the URC. Both sides secured victories in their league openers, with Edinburgh here getting the better of Dragons in Wales. Glasgow visit Connacht in Galway tomorrow, while the Capital Club host Lions of South Africa.
We've got an opportunity this weekend to try and kick on. Lions had a tight game at the weekend. They're a good side, they will apply a lot of pressure. We know what we need to go out and beat them.
We got the win on Sunday, but it's all focused on Connacht this week, so we're really looking forward to getting out there.
You can't ignore the fact that you're a Kiwi. Auckland, I think, is that?
Yeah, just about north of Auckland. Yeah.
So a big game this weekend for your home country.
Yeah, definitely.
8 o'clock on Saturday night. I take it you'll be trying to get in front of a screen somewhere?
Yeah, I think we finished the game a bit earlier, so hopefully get somewhere and watch the game. So sure, I'll take my All Blacks jersey, but be a bit nervous. But I'm excited. It should be an awesome event, and I'm sure everyone's looking forward to it as well.
I'm sure they are, but you know what the debate will be, don't you, Sally? Strictly or the rugby tomorrow night?
Well, what are you going to choose?
Oh, I've got to say the rugby, but I'll maybe try and juggle both.
I thought you'd be a man for the sequence.
I don't mind a bit of dancing, I have to say.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Sally.
Now it's over to Laura Miller to find out what's happening on BBC Scotland at 7 o'clock.
Hello, coming up tonight, we'll have more on that WhatsApp row. We all use it, but what are the pitfalls for government ministers? We ask an expert. And as support grows for a ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza conflict, we'll have all the latest from the Middle East. And nearly 40 years after the first successful separation of conjoined twins at Great Ormond Street Hospital in London, we'll hear from some of those they've helped. Switch over at 7.
But in the meantime, with another weather warning in place this weekend, there's severe disruption on the railways again. All direct trains between the Central Belt and Aberdeen and Inverness have been cancelled. Our reporter Phil McDonald is at Aberdeen train station for us this evening. What can you tell us, Phil?
Well, Sally, it's certainly a lot quieter here than it would normally be on a Friday night, with fewer services on the departure board due to that yellow warning for rain that is in place until midnight on Monday. And we're expecting, I think it's fair to say, a weekend of travel uncertainty. Network Rail Scotland has placed speed restrictions on its tracks due to a risk of flooding, and many people have suffered delays and cancellations on trains today. Some have decided to abandon journeys on the railway, trying to book bus tickets instead at short notice.
We're sitting having my breakfast and then he's seen it on his phone that Aham's cancelled, so yeah.
Home and get on a bus anyway.
Here we go, so it's hopefully, fingers crossed.
Everything has just gone a bit haywire, so yeah, but that's fine, I can get the coach, so that's fine.
Last night at about 11:30 when I was in my bed, I noticed it, so I was like, oh, I better check. That was about the other coaches for Edinburgh, so then I checked to Glasgow and seen it had been cancelled as well. But I noticed that most of them are fully booked now.
And Phil, what's ScotRail telling folk that are planning to use the trains this weekend?
Well, with no direct services from the Central Belt up to Aberdeen and Inverness, passengers can expect fewer journeys, slower trains and changes at Dundee and Perth. And ScotRail has said it's important to stay on top of the latest advice.
Our routes are all open, but there is a reduced service. For example, if you're travelling between Aberdeen and Montrose, there's significantly fewer services than normal, one every few hours. So check the app, take a look at the website so that you know exactly what's happening. We will get you where you need to be, but there is disruption because of this weather warning.
Now, the timing of this yellow warning is what's causing real concern to the authorities, as this is a region still recovering from the damage of Storm Babette.
OK, well, Phil, thank you very much indeed for that. We can go straight to Chris with the weather forecast now to give us some of the details about that rain.
Indeed, Sally, thank you very much indeed. Some vibrant autumnal colours here, but really the focus is on the coming rain. Thank you. A very good evening to you. Yes, once again, it's rainfall that is front and centre in the forecast over the coming days. And as we've been hearing, a Met Office warning in force. This is the rainfall accumulation for the next few days, and you can see it's the northeast that will bear the brunt of most of the rainfall, exactly where we don't want it. And that's why we have the Met Office warning for a number of days, likely to cause some significant flooding in places and certainly some travel disruption, as we were hearing from Phil there. As we head into this evening, you can see it's a cloudy picture with outbreaks of rain, pulses of wet weather pushing in towards the northeast on a fairly brisk east-southeast wind. Temperatures overnight around 7 to 9 Celsius, cooler there for Shetland, 6 degrees in Lowick. So tomorrow it's a cloudy day with outbreaks of rain once again across parts of the central lowlands in towards Tayside and the northeast, and it just keeps on coming through the course of the day. Bit of brightness elsewhere down towards Ayrshire early on, but then cloud moving in and showers follow on. And tomorrow is a windy day. It's a brisk east-southeast wind, strong at times. Got the warning on once again there, just so you can see that rain pushing in, and actually a bit of orographic enhancements. The hills sort of squeezing even more rain out of the clouds, really what we don't want, and windy across the northwest and the Northern Isles. For those hill walking or climbing, it will be windy across western ranges, severe gale to storm force gusts at times on the tops with some showers. Across eastern ranges, driving rain with strong to gale force winds. Pretty chilly and significant buffeting as well with those wind strengths, and some low cloud as well, down to around 300 to 700 metres. Tomorrow night, the rain eases off for a time, but not for long. You can see more wet weather pushing in towards the south as we head through towards Sunday. Here's the chart for Sunday. Low pressure situated towards the southwest and this weather front moving in. At the same time, we've got colder air trying to push in towards the north, but really it's the rain that is our main focus. And let me just zoom in. You can see that occlusion bringing, once again, heavy rain to the same sort of areas. So another Met Office yellow warning throughout the day on Sunday and Monday, a little further south in towards Edinburgh, the Lothians and the Borders too. So Sunday is cloudy, it's pretty wet for many areas. Gale force gusts around the east coast in towards the Firth of Forth, a little bit drier towards the west and northwest. Chilly in the north with that cool air, but for many, pretty wet indeed. Looking ahead towards Monday, the rain and the wind should be easing down, but it's still an unsettled picture. And of course, don't forget this weekend, clock change. Clocks go back 1 hour overnight Saturday to Sunday. That's the forecast for now. Sally.
Well reminded. Thank you very much, Chris. Quick look at tonight's top story again. Electronic messages sent by Scotland's National Clinical Director during the COVID pandemic have been deleted, according to a newspaper. It's been reported that Jason Leitch deleted his WhatsApp messages every day. They can't now be given to the UK or Scottish COVID inquiries. And McAlpine will be here with the late news, but from me, it's good night. Bye-bye.